This week on the OneCast, we're joined by a Bass Fishing Hall of Famer, a Bassmaster Classic winner, a BASS Angler of the Year, Mike Iaconelli. You may know him better as Ike. Looking forward to this one.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What is going on, OneCast fans? Welcome to the OneCast. We're going to jump right into it. We're getting joined by Mike Iaconelli tonight. Ike, he's a household name. I'm sure all of you know him. If you don't, if you're new to tournament fishing, because we do know we have some folks out there that are fairly new to bass fishing and tournament fishing, appreciate you being here. Mike won the 2003 Bassmaster Classic. He's won numerous Elite Series events. He's won Angler of the Year. There was one neat fact before I bring him on I wanted to bring up. Because he is the only angler, if I remember correctly, that has won at all of the pro levels. So he won a BASS kayak event, he's won an open, and he's won an Elite Series event. So that's pretty cool.
Bass Nation too, I believe.
We can ask him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep, you're right. He did. Yep, Bass Nation Championship. That was in '99. You're absolutely right. Yep.
I do have to say this. Besides all the victories, which are left in the legacy that Ike has, he's just a stand-up dude. He's a hell of a dude. He's a good family man. He brings a lot of character to the sport and really defines like you can be yourself in this sport. So that's important to note. And I'm excited to bring him on. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Ike, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Really good. Really good. In New Jersey, driving home. It's raining. There's traffic, but we have signal. Woo!
There you go.
Yeah, that is the most important thing when you're trying to do this. Obviously, you have your podcast, so you know the technological issues you run into, especially trying to get anglers on because y'all are always on the road. So there's always this little bit of technical difficulties, but glad you were able to get on. I've met you a few times at other shows. We met down there at Lake Murray. For those of you listening, you probably figured out Ike was the one who I was riding with when we had the incident. Again, we're not going to go into it a bunch. It happened. We're all good. We kept fishing. I got to see one of your celebrations that day because you caught a really good fish in the last couple minutes that kind of set you up for success, which was awesome. But yeah, so had a great time spending the day in the boat with you. I know we get asked all the time because we go around to shows and stuff. How are these guys really like they are on camera? Mike Iaconelli, Ike, you see what you get. That's just how he is. I had a great time on the boat with you. We had a ton of fun. So looking forward to talking some fishing with you. Trey, you always got a million questions. I know you've got one ready to go.
Before we get in there, I do have to say, I have to give all the credit to you for one of my club tournament wins a couple years ago because I was fishing Falls Lake and I had just watched a bunch of MLF Cup events and you were down on Florida and you're like, I'm going to start on riprap. When you're on a new body of water, just start on riprap.
Yeah.
Where my fish, it was a February tournament, cold, and so I didn't need to be where I needed to be to like 10 or 11 o'clock, and we launched there at the boat ramp with the riprap there. I was like, let's start on riprap. That's a good idea. Iaconelli told me last night on the video. The only 3 fish caught in the tournament were caught on that riprap in 10 minutes. And
Wow.
So that was it.
How about that? That's awesome. And it, riprap is one of those forms of cover that they live around all year round. I mean, whether it's a causeway, a bridge, a road, a marina, if you can find rock on it that has that 45-degree angle, you're going to have fish on it all year round. And it honestly, I can tell you, over the years, it has saved me more times than you could imagine. Just not catching them. My main pattern evaporates. I look around the lake and I say, there's a stretch of riprap. I go over there and catch a few. So I love hearing that because it honestly is one of those forms of cover that will always produce some fish. Always.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they just associate to riprap? Because it seems like no matter where you are in the country, it's not really a natural it's not a tree, it's not a lay down, it's not grass, it's something we have put there as humans. But why do you think that is that riprap holds those fish?
Yeah, riprap rock is a lot like grass. In grass, I can give the same analogy to, in that it's really the beginning of the circle of life. So, you know, when you look at that ecosystem of a rock, especially a riprap embankment, you have algae and you have bait and you have, heat and you have crevices and you've got crawfish, and it really provides a platform for those fish to be able to survive the whole year. And again, especially if it has that 45-degree angle to it. And that's really, in my mind, that's the ideal riprap. You know, I'm not talking about riprap that's vertical, and I'm not talking about riprap that's horizontal, but riprap that has a 45 on it. That's the perfect environment for the fish. So the food's there, the algae's there, the bass are there all the time.
That's right.
All the time.
That's right. Pete asked me if I had a question for you starting off, and I got a great one. How you said it before the show, and I don't think you look a day over 25. You're welcome. But
thank you.
how do you keep the energy flowing all the time? Is it a serious amount of 5-hour energy drinks? Is it just your personality? Is it that you can't pump your own gas in Jersey? What is the deal? How do you do it, bro?
Probably definitely has a little bit to do with the gas thing, which is very strange. But, the only thing I can tell you is there's probably two parts to it. The one is just my personality. And I've always been like this since I was a kid. I think now, when I was young in the 70s and 80s, they didn't diagnose that thing that I have. So, I may be a little, just hyper. And again, now I think they diagnose that as being a bad thing. But I'm hyper. I've always been full of energy. So there's that half of it. But the other half of it is just, man, I'm getting to do something that I truly love. Like whether I'm fishing an elite, filming a Going Ike, or out with my son, which I was today. It's the kind of activity that just keeps me motivated. Like I just have all this energy. Now, if I go and play a round of golf, I don't feel that.
Yeah.
So there's other things, but for me, fishing is that spark, and that's why all these years later, next year will be my 30th year doing it full time. All these years later, I still feel energetic and young mentally, and it's because of the sport of fishing. Now, physically, different story. I'm definitely feeling the effects of age and all that stuff. But I love fishing. I love fishing.
I think that's the cure to the medical experts' diagnosis of like ADD or ADHD. Just go fishing, bro.
Just go fishing. That's
just go fishing.
Sure. That's right.
No, I appreciate that. We got a lot of negativity. We don't really dive into that too much in the show, but somebody with 30 years of experience standing on a platform with BASS and BPT and all the other major professional tours, you get to witness a lot of the negativity. And I'm sure it's easy for some of that to soak in and bring anglers down, but you seem to avoid that. What is your method with the social media stuff, just skirting around that issue? We don't have to deep dive into it, but how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a hard thing to manage because, listen, at the end of the day, you want people to like you and you want to be liked, right? That's a human trait to want to be liked. But, for me, I think there's, again, two parts, but one part is growing up in New Jersey. And shout out to New Jersey. The one thing growing up in New Jersey in the 80s and early 90s, man, you deal with criticism from an early age, and that's just the way it was. And you had to learn how to deal with it. So I think where I grew up regionally, culturally, the culture here, you have to deal with criticism, and you have to be able to just say, screw you. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why I did this. And it's not always right. Listen, man, I've made some big mistakes in my career and in my life. And I'm human. and you have to accept that and move on with it. And and if people don't want to do that with you, screw you. I mean, you honestly have to have that attitude. So part of it, I think, is growing up in New Jersey. The other part of it, more with fishing for me, has been that. So the real root of it is back in 2001, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer, and he had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And before that, by the way, my uncle's super close to me. He's like my dad. Before that, I think I had a little different outlook on life. But when he went through that and he battled that and came out on the other side, still healthy to this day,
that's awesome.
It changed me a little bit. And I wasn't afraid to be who I am. I wasn't afraid to act the way I act. And it didn't bother me when people didn't like me, because look, this is who I am. Life is short. Have fun. Do what you love, bro.
That's right.
And when you have that attitude, it hurts a lot less when people think you're a douche.
That's right.
I think, and I hope you realize it, and I don't know if you did. I've had this conversation with you once before, but I believe you inspired an entire generation of urban, if you want to say urban outdoorsmen, right? Because I grew up just outside of Pittsburgh. I was like not even like 30 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh, right? We fished the 3 rivers, fished a lot of the waters you did at the Classic out there.
Yep.
And when you came in to the elites, or I think it was the 150s back then, whatever it was, when you made it there and you started to get that television, like I realized as a young kid, I could be that kid that liked to hunt, that I liked to fish. I didn't have to try to not do that,
right,
to fit in with the other people, because that's what I like to do. And then those other kids that like to do that, you gravitate towards them and you build your friend group of people that are like-minded. But before that, like, I was the only kid I thought that sat and watched Bassmaster if we weren't fishing on a Saturday morning, right? Like, or I was the only one that was like, oh, the Classic's coming to Pittsburgh, this is awesome, we're going to go to the expo, we're going to go sit on the river in our boat. Like, seeing somebody that grew up in Jersey, which everybody thinks Jersey is all just this big urban area. There are some rural areas, but you kind of get this, like, I can do it. This guy came from a city that was right. I don't know if that's right around when City Limits was coming around too.
Yep.
So we got to see you fishing in those inner city waters with different people and stuff. And it was, it kind of lets you know, like, you really can do anything you want. Like, before that, a guy from Pennsylvania, that was a pipe dream, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I could ever compete with these guys from Alabama and South Carolina and all of these other places. But then you see Mike Iaconelli do it, and he's out there, young guy, full energy, having a blast, and it's like, man, dude, like, that could be me, right?
It's a t-shirt design. Ike broke the stereotype.
That's right.
I'm telling you, let's coin that together. Let's do that together. No, that's a serious thing. You talked about the culture, Ike. You talked about growing up in Jersey. How much has that culture followed you throughout your entire career, and where have some of the challenges been with the Southern culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I'm to start with, I'm very, very proud of growing up, in the Philadelphia, New Jersey area. I'm proud of it. And it's awesome that, I was able to carry that into my fishing and into my brand. And so, when you talk about city fishing or street fishing or urban fishing, I'm proud to have helped bring that to light.
Yep.
I've said this before in other interviews, but I really feel like I was lucky because I came up in the perfect storm, so I'll explain that. Had I come up 10 years earlier, or had I come up 10 years later, I don't think I would have had the success, whether it's competitively or just with the brand and the marketing, because when I came in, media and TV and social media was being born. All these things were being born where it gave the anglers a platform that they had never had before in the history of fishing. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I came up in that time frame. And so there's that part of it. But, the other thing that you mentioned in that question is I carry the roots of growing up here with me, and it's helped me and it's hurt me. And I'll explain that. So it's helped me because I'm just going to put it frank, and you know, the fishing in New Jersey, especially when you talk about the Delaware River, sucks. It sucks. And a lot of our lakes are little. They're 1,000-acre lakes, 500-acre lakes. And we have millions of people that live in New York, New Jersey, Philip, Pennsylvania, in this tri-state area. So it's like a mini Japan that I grew up in, with really bad fishing and really crowded conditions. So that's helped me when the fishing's tough. And you know, when the fish aren't biting and when you have to finesse. Growing up here, my background has helped me in fishing, but it's also hurt me because, you know, Florida strain bass, different animal. 100,000-acre reservoirs that are dam controlled, not familiar, you know. So there's an element that I had to sort of relearn, and you know, that wasn't up my alley. So in those situations, being from New Jersey maybe hurt a little bit, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Really proud of being a Jersey guy and being an urban guy. I'm really proud of that.
You bring up Florida bass, and I hate to do this to you, but Florida for your entire career has been an absolute thorn in your side.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Given the way you like to fish, you would think it would set up, right? Why do you think you've struggled so much in Florida professionally?
Man, I know, because there's elements where you say, man, that should be your state. And then, but the bottom line for me, and I really believe this, is that when a cold front hits, or when the fishing gets tough in Florida, you have to slow down. And what I mean, like, you have to snail the cover, and you have to make the same cast 50 times. I can't do that. I still have a hard time doing that. Ask anybody. And I think that's hurt me more times than not in Florida. Of all the species of bass, smallmouth, spotted bass, shoal bass, whatever, that Florida strain is a very unique creature, different animal. And I think because of that, it's hurt me, and not slowing down. And it's almost like I can't learn my lesson because I don't want to slow down, you know?
I've struggled with that, like, because here in North Carolina, you fished our lakes. You know, Jordan Lake is our home lake. You fish the heavy hitters there, Falls, Sharon Harris.
Hey.
Our fish, you know, we've got to know the biologists fairly well. They've come on the show. We've talked about it. And when they DNA our fish, they're majority Florida strain. So when we get those cold fronts and things like that, our fish react a lot like a Florida bass does. And when I first moved down here, I had the exact same struggle. Now, I have, in the last couple of years, a lot's been fishing with this guy because he's been really good at slowing down, is too slow.
Eat a sandwich.
Like, he yells at me because my trolling, when we fish out of my boat, because my trolling motor stays on 7. It never comes off of 7. I'm getting it, right? Like, we're going to go find, and he's like, bro, you've got to slow this down. So that makes sense. But it's like, that one's always puzzled me, and I've always wanted to ask you that question because knowing how you like to fish, it seems like that would be the perfect storm.
Do you think do you feel a little bit different about the tournaments down there this year because they were a little bit later in the year? Because normally it's what, February or March you're doing your Florida swing, and this year was a little later. So, like, how did that change, and did that help your style out? Or
it was nice. I mean, I ended up leaving Florida with one good one and one bad one, and it was really nice to see Florida at a time of the year where they weren't spawning. You know, most of the time we go there, they're spawning. So that was nice. But you know, I look back on my track record, and I've had some really terrible ones, but I've also had some really good ones. I did have a second place on the Kissimmee chain to Shaw Grigsby. And, you know, so there's been some glimmers of hope in 30 years down in Florida, but
Pete.
You know,
and I said he's had some good ones, but it has definitely been one area.
Listen, don't make him throw you out of the boat.
Now everybody understands why. No, but if you looking at the track record, it's usually a struggle state, right? Like, and that's why I wanted to ask him about it, because I knew he had the second there. And if you're going to lose on the Kissimmee chain, it's to Shaw Grigsby, it's kind of hard to argue. Like, the guy lives, like, he knows that.
And
well, he knows that.
He has the best mustache.
The mustache, like,
alligator hunt.
So it was just always curious to me, because that was a struggle I had the further south I've gone. And I finally fished Florida for the first time this year, and I struggled a little bit. And it was the same deal. We got those cold front, and I just, didn't slow down enough. But you've been doing this 30 years now. Number one, are you going to try to chase down Rick Clum? Are you going to go another 20?
No. And listen, I've said it so many times. Of all the heroes of the sport, and he's one of my big heroes of the sport. That's a guy that I've looked up to. Of all the heroes I have in this sport, he's one that has a theory that I don't agree with. And it's not wrong, but it's just I don't agree with him. I love Rick to death, but he really believes retirement is a bad word, and I see I get it. I get why, he views retirement as giving up, as quitting, as ending your life. And I don't see it that way. I think that when the time is right for me, retirement's not going to mean the end. It's going to mean the beginning of something else, another part of
New
my
chapter.
Story, right? Of your story of your life. So, I really, I hope to stay in the fishing industry. I hope to do new and exciting things that I haven't done, whether it's through, TV or social media or whatever, through getting kids fishing. There's all these things I want to do, and it doesn't have to involve competitive fishing. So, so for me, I don't view retirement as a bad word. And because of that, I don't think I'll make it 50 years. I'm really happy I've made it 30. And, when I look back on my career, I've accomplished the goals that I can remember being my son's age, 13, 14, 15, reading Bassmaster magazine, watching Bassmasters on TNN, getting the chills, watching the guy hoist the classic trophy, the Angler of the Year trophy. I wanted to do those things as a kid, and I got to do them. And so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a really great feeling in your life when you accomplish goals. And, I'll know when the time's right to leave the competitive side, but I hope I don't ever have to leave, the sport of fishing,
No, I don't think you will.
No, and I think you see that. I really thought when Kevin recently announced his retirement that it was going to be a short one, but your show, I think when I listened when he came on with you and you guys talked, like, I think he has the exact same mentality. Like, now there's a lot of things he's always wanted to do that he couldn't. Right. And he has set himself up to do those things. And now he's able to do things that he's wanted to do versus what he had to do to, to be able to tour as a pro and do those things. And you tried the retirement thing for a short time. So you kind of got a taste of it. So you definitely know you're not ready for that.
Yeah.
But a follow-up to that 30-year, you hear people all the time talk about lake cycling, right? And how much lakes change, fisheries, things like that.
Yeah.
I got to see it down there with you guys on Murray. There's more grass in that lake than anybody remembers there being in a long time. I know it used to be a pretty heavy grass lake, and then they killed it. And now it seems to be making a comeback. Kind of, you can be general or you can go with a specific body of water, but kind of explains how lakes cycle, because we get that question a lot. A lake will be fishing really good, and then all of a sudden it's not so great, and people don't understand why that is, but it's a natural thing.
Yeah. Lakes, rivers, reservoirs, streams, ponds, anything you fish has cycles. And, majority of the time it's a natural cycle. And there are times when it's, a man-made driven cycle, right? Or a man-driven cycle. And, those cycling things happen because of a lot of reasons. It could be, grass related. It could be food related. It could be, water quality related. We have wet years and we have dry years, right? So all those things affect the cycle of that fishery. So lakes do cycle for sure. And, you'll see a lake. Murray's a great example, to be honest, because I feel like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Murray was in a heyday period. And then the grass went away. The stripers were introduced. Bluebacks came in and changed the way they lived. It was in a little down cycle. Now the last 4 or 5 years, the bait has come back like crazy. The grass has, and it's better than ever. So lakes cycle. But let me tell you this, and somebody probably going to get mad at me for saying this, but in my opinion, fishing right now, I would honestly say fishing across the board, saltwater, multi-species, all of it, but bass fishing has never been better in the history of the sport of competitive bass fishing, of fishing. Fishing's never been better than what's happening right now. And honestly, there's a lot of little pieces to that, but you factor in weather and grass and bait and this amazing boom in technology and being able to find fish and see what they're doing and really, better lures, better line, better boats. Because of all that, I believe fishing has never been better than it is right now. The best it's ever been. Ever been.
I agree with you, especially on the technology piece. There's so much heartache and pain over forward-facing sonar. I'll just bring it out. But that technology has really, truly shown us how much and what quality lives in our bodies of water that we never fished for before, that we thought these lakes were, in fact, going downhill. They were in terrible condition,
right?
But that is not the case, because we have proven that wrong time and time over through your guys' Elite Series events, the BPT, even here at the regional level. Like, we are weighing bags that are 29 plus pound bags in some of these lakes that are supposed to be quote unquote on the downtrend.
It's crazy. It
doesn't even make any sense.
Have you ever seen more 20 to 30 pound bags in professional bass fishing? It's just
honestly, no.
crazy.
Think the last 2 years, 3 years, how many Century Belts have there been?
Yeah, look at Lake Fork this year.
I mean,
or Toledo, or Lake Fork. Yeah. Was there 10 Century Belts?
Yeah, in Toledo and St. Lawrence. I mean, there's been a dozen, 2 dozen, Century Belts maybe over the last 2 to 3 years.
And those are just the results we know about. It's not local Jim Bob on the lake that knows every single dirty hole, or he's catching 40 pound bags that you don't know about, because he's not going to let that secret out, because Ike's going to go dominate on that body of water when he goes fishing derby there, right? So you got to, but that's right. Kind of piggybacking off of, Pete talking about like your 30 years and stuff. I wanted to know, what is the most? Oh, did we lose him? No, he's still there. You guys? Yeah, you got us. You got us over those last the dirty 30 pack of fishing professionally. What is the most genuine and heartfelt thing that's come off of those platforms for you?
Wow, that's a great question. There's been a lot, and a lot of them have been the things that don't necessarily coincide with the competitive tournament fishing, right? So, some of the TV projects I was involved in, and the travel I got to do, the people I met, that was amazing. I would say for sure 100% teaching people at the Bass University, doing the podcast like you guys, doing the Ike Live podcast the last 10 years. Like, all these spin-offs have been so amazing. But the number one thing, and I can say this without any, has been having an impact on kids, getting kids fishing. And that really is something that my wife Becky and I have put a lot of work, like tender love and hard work into it, because it means a lot to us. And now Ike Foundation's been around for over 10 years. We're at the point now where we're getting people emailing us and writing us letters and seeing us at events, and they're adults. They're freaking adults, and they have a job and they have their own kids, and they're saying, thank you for introducing me to fishing. Thank you for showing me the outdoors. And man, that's one of the most special ones I can tell you anybody can have. You do it with your family, you do it with kids you don't know, and you get them to love the outdoors. Dude, that's better than any classic trophy or angler of the year trophy out there. I'll tell you right now, it's the best.
So that was 100% a rhetorical question, because I believe I knew you were going to say that. But let me ask you this on top of that question. We talk about it a lot. Our motto here is to grow a culture of anglers helping anglers, right? One cast at a time.
Yeah.
We're all about education and information. You hear it a lot from the professional anglers, like we're out here to market and advertise and grow the sport and things like that. But here's the hard question. When we're getting more pressure than we've ever seen before on our lakes, people tend to complain about it. What are your thoughts on that? And is that contradictive to the narrative of growing the sport?
Yeah, well, that's a complicated question. My good friend Brian the Carpenter. If you watch Ike Live, you know Brian the Carpenter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He always says that I ruined South Jersey because.
Oh no!
I've ruined it.
We lost you for a second. We got you back.
We got you back.
Okay, but in saying that, I think the positives of growing the sport far outweigh the negatives, because listen, here's my take on it. If you don't get the next group involved, right? If you don't get them excited about fishing, and here's the other thing, I want to make sure I say this. I'm not necessarily talking about competitive bass fishing. I'm talking about fishing. I'm talking about grabbing a rod and having something pull back on the other end. That's all I'm talking about. Spending time in the outdoors with a fishing rod. That's what I'm talking about. If you don't have the next group in line ready to take your place, the sport's going to go away. There's so many people that already want to get rid of it. They want to privatize water. PETA wants to, we're hurting the fish. Come on. There's so many things trying to lose fishing. So by getting the next group fishing, by getting even adults fishing who haven't fished, we're paving the way for the next group in the sport. We have to do that. We have to do that.
Yeah, I agree. You are securing the future. There's always somebody in line to take your place, and that is just the part of growing anything, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or professional bass angling or whatever. You have to have somebody in line to take your place.
I think it's important. We talked about it early on when we first started the show, and we've grown pretty significantly since then. So I want to bring up, the ASA does their thing down there at ICAST, right? And they always share industry numbers. And I'm trying to think back. I think it was 2023 when we had the first live one post COVID again. Might have been 2022. And they shared the number. It was like we were up to 5 million anglers, right? Nationwide, whatever that number was. I'm making them up because I can't remember off the top of my head. But only 1% of that number is competitive bass fishing. Right. So 99% of and like I said, I don't remember the exact number. We're going to use 5 million because that's what I said.
No, I think there's like 40 million fishing licenses sold.
It might be. So 1% of that is tournament anglers, right? So if you think about that, like you said, we need to get more folks fishing because everybody wants to take away rights across the board. No matter what the right is, people want to take them away from you, right?
Yes, they do.
If we don't have people in the pipeline that want to fish, be it competitively or just to go wet a line at your local park sitting on the bank, eventually they are going to shut that down, and you're never going to get to take your kid out there. And I know some of my best memories growing up, and I know the same for Trey. I know Ben has those. Is time on the water with our dad or our mom, whoever it is that takes you fishing, right? Like
That's right.
That's what you remember. Like, oh, what do you remember when you were a kid that was your favorite day? Well, we would go down the river,
knocking the sides off
smallmouth
everything.
fish. Yeah, Trey was from Michigan, so they eat everything.
I'm
So
from Kalamazoo, so I can't go anywhere without hearing about KVD.
No, I was gonna. We were talking about memories. I still remember the time I outfished my dad. I'm still a better fisherman than him. Now, when it comes to hunting, it's a different story.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sitting next to a guy, a young man that's getting so good.
Yeah,
he's taking my spot here. I'm actually learning from him, and it's so cool. I as a dad, it's the most rewarding thing when your son starts beating you. I can tell you that it feels good in a weird way. I'm competitive and I like to win, but when your son's beating you, you're kind of like, man, that's awesome.
Is Vegas in the truck with you right now?
He's in the truck right now, sitting next to me. Yeah.
Let me ask him one question.
Okay, Vegas, there you go.
What's up, dude?
Hi, everybody.
Hey, so are you a better angler than your dad? You're grounded.
Be honest.
I mean, it depends. It depends. I guess if we go deep, like I'm better at live scope, but like
you're way better at live scope.
If we're shallow, then he's better than me because he's been doing it for a little bit of time.
Little bit, yeah.
I like your humble answer. I mean, that's pretty honest, right? Like all these young kids that Pete and I and Ben fish against, they're way better at the technology than we are. But they're still taking the trash out at the end of the day. So, that's the way it works. So I appreciate it, Vegas.
All right.
Thanks for jumping on, brother.
Answer. Yeah, that was a
good answer.
Dude, I was probably actually even a little more humble because he's getting really good at a lot of different things. But it like I said, it's a great example of you gotta pass it on, whether it's your own kids or your neighbors or your friends' kids, whatever. You gotta pass that on or we're in trouble.
That's right.
And he, like you said, you came up and you and Kevin talked about this on your show with him. Like you guys came in and up at the perfect time, right? Like
perfect.
Social media, the ESPN deal was struck. Like you were getting all those non-endemics that were throwing money into fishing. Like it was getting that NASCAR level attention, right?
It was.
Now, like that is not there. The non-endemics aren't there as much. And because of the technology, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, the learning curve that you all faced to learn some of these different techniques, the offshore stuff, which didn't even really exist outside of a few people, is cut down. So like for Vegas coming up, he's got to learn that technology side of things, the deep game, but then he has to pick your brain and figure out that shallow game because there's still going to be guys like you and some of us that are, in our early or late 30s, early 40s that are maybe going to take a shot someday and make it that can do that shallow stuff. So I think now it's tougher from that aspect too, because you have to be able to do all of that. Where earlier on you got guys like Hackney who was able to go shallow and catch fish and do things. And outside of John Cox, because he's just a freak of nature with the stuff that he's doing right now. Like that's super hard to do right now, right? With the way technology. So how, I know you're a fan and you're not a fan, but has technology changed the way that you approach tournament fishing now, or do you still try to stick to your strengths the majority of the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely a tricky question because, this particular technology, and when we're talking about, forward facing, live scope or active target or whatever you want to call it, that particular technology is
we'll get him back in just a second.
It's real-time underwater flashlight is what forward facing is. So it's a different technology, but like old technologies that popped up, I think you have to adapt, you have to learn it, or you're gonna get left behind. So that's just the nature of any sport, any profession. And so as much as I don't like it, I got to get better at it. I have to know when to employ it. If they're biting a crankbait shallow, yes, I'm going to go do that. But if they're out deep and they're out there floating around in the middle of nowhere, I got to also learn how to be able to do that. So, so versatility is key. You said an important thing, which is today's generation, they have so much more knowledge, information at their fingertips through podcasts like this, through YouTube, it's crazy. They got so much information. So their learning curve is shorter. They got high school bass fishing, college bass fishing. Like, their learning curve is short. But the other thing, and this is why a lot of young athletes in any sport are good, is because they're an open book, and here's the part of human nature that takes you down. And I'm talking about myself, is that I've done things a certain way for 40 years, 30 years tournament fishing, and you get stuck in your ways. But when you're 13 or when you're 18 or 20, you're very much an open book and a sponge, and there are no wrong things to do. And that's a unique factor about being young in any activity or any sport. And so good athletes in football, baseball, or fishing are an open book, and they're not afraid to learn new things, and they're not afraid to try something. And that's awesome. And I wish I could rekindle that in myself,
Yeah.
You definitely can, but let me ask you the opposite to that. Like, you kind of talk about being pessimistic towards information gathering because you're stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
Let's think about that on the opposite end. So you got Vegas, who is absolutely a hammer, and maybe Vegas can answer this, but have you seen it work the opposite way, where you're taking in too much information and you don't commit to a technique, or you're overthinking your strategy and it burns you?
Oh yeah. I can let Vegas answer this, but I can tell you that can, in my career, I've always been pro information. And when I say that, I'm not talking about getting illegal waypoints or watching whatever. I'm not getting into that whole thing. I'm talking about being prepared for an event, doing map study, doing historical, and I did this before the internet, looking at old issues of magazines, finding, you go into the tournament with as much information as possible, and you have a game plan, and you're prepared. I've always been that kind of angler, and I think it can be good, but it can also definitely burn you. How many times fishing a body of water I know like the back of my hand, I have a terrible event. And that's because you're letting preconceived notions steer your day, and you should really have that mix. I think that's the perfect angler. Has a mix of some history and preconceived notions, and here's what I think they're going to do, but they can drop that on the drop of a dime. They could drop that and fish the moment.
That's right.
And go in the bottom of the boat and retie something and do something totally. Like, that's the angler that's going to have success. So I think you have to have both those things,
You said a key thing there, and that's history. I think a lot of times we do get caught up on history and fishing history. I actually just talked to a buddy of mine today when we were talking about some struggles he's had in some tournaments and stuff. And he's like, I've got to get out of this cycle because I'm just running history. And when my history doesn't work, I'm getting spun out because now I don't know what to do. So I've got to expand. And I've done it. I know Trey's done it.
We've all
Ben's done it. If you fished, whether you fish tournaments or you're just going out to fun fish, like, you're like, oh yeah, I always catch them on this rock pile. And you pull up and you don't catch them on that rock pile. And next thing you know, you're just coming unglued and you don't know what to do.
Yeah. And here's the thing, human nature is to fish positive, your positive experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Fish history. That's human nature. Your whole life is based around going back and doing things that were positive, that had a good outcome. But in fishing, the problem is it's almost always different, between years, between weeks, between months, even between days. It's almost always different. The lake that Vegas and I practiced today, same time of the year. We fished it last year. But this year, the water was warmer by about 5 degrees. The water was lower by about a foot and a half. And it really did create an environment today where it's almost like we were fishing a new lake. Nothing that we fished last year worked. And then the other part to that is you got to remember here's and this is the beauty of fishing to me. This is why I still love it as much as I do now as when I was a kid, which is you can never know everything you need to know.
That's right.
At the end of the day, a fish has fins and he swims. And the only two things in a fish's life that he cares about, he cares about, is food and sex.
Yeah.
Outside of that, nothing else matters. There's and so what I'm saying is there's not a lot of logic sometimes to what happens, right? So, but it's the beauty of fishing. I love that I can still go out and zero, and I do. I still stink it up. That's what I love about fishing. I love that you can never know enough about it, and it's always different. I love that about the sport. I love it.
And I think when we talked about technology, like what forward-facing sonar has done is it's taught us how much we thought we knew that we didn't actually know. We never, I'm sure you grew up the same way. When you ran over a school suspended fish, you just kept rolling because those fish aren't going to bite, right? Like they're not set up where they're going to bite. So a lot of times you didn't spend a bunch of time on those fish.
It was a dirty, evil word when I was growing up in fishing. When you said suspended fish, you just ran for the hills. That was when you said suspended fish, it was like, it was terrible. It was like saying your mom to somebody, Your mom.
100%. And
suspended fish.
It's been like that.
Your mom.
Terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible.
I'll tell you, Vegas is in the truck, but Mike said it. I just think you defined a bass just like a man, food and sex.
Food, sex.
And that's it.
That's it.
I think we overcomplicate.
Except we like fishing too, so we have three there, right? but no, it's we do overcomplicate it, and technology does some of that. But I just think it's amazing how much we thought we knew that in the last 3 years we've learned that we didn't know.
And we're just going to continue to learn more. I mean,
it's pretty mind blowing. If the technology keeps advancing at the pace it is, I think you're right. I think we're going to keep learning more. We're going to.
Gosh. I mean, how further can it go, really?
You hear all the time, you hear about the AI stuff slipping in. And, I think it will be a day when you look on that unit and you look at that box, and you're going to know a bass from a crappie, from a carp, from a catfish. Will be dead on every time. I see that day coming. And, that probably highlights my other argument for the technology, which is, my first one, which is you can't stop it. You got to accept it. But the other argument is, man, that's not fishing. When it gets to that point, God, that's not fishing. That's not.
Well, there's no element of surprise. There's no mystery anymore.
There's no casting into the unknown. The cast into the deep unknown. That's going to be gone.
I think when you know the entire team's complete playbook, I think the jig is up at that point and the game's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that just kind of takes the sportsmanship out of it. So I would agree with you on that one. The day it says oh, this is a 4.14 pound largemouth, cast at this. Nah, we're not going there. I'm done with that.
I hope not. But listen, we're in a weird, strange world right now. I watched movies as a kid. I'll give you a couple examples. I'm a big sci-fi and horror buff, and The Terminator is one. John Carpenter had a movie called They Live. That's one. Literally, all this stuff is coming true. Skynet. We got
Skynet. We got Skynet.
Musk has a Skynet, right, Vegas? What is his name? Musk.
Elon.
all this crap's coming true. It's crazy.
And then you still have like native species like the predator, who has a sweet helmet that can dictate everything that's going on. So, that's my favorite movie besides Top Gun. Dude, let's talk some fishing. I know we only got about 9 minutes left here. We don't want to keep you forever. But I do have a straight up fishing question. I'm holding in my hand the Angler of the Year winning for us, Poppin' Frog. But what is Mike Iaconelli's absolute favorite technique, and what do you hate the most?
Oh, wow. Good question.
Full send.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll give you a general broad answer on my favorite, which is power fishing. Power fishing, which means throwing something, covering water, eliciting a reaction strike, right? Crankbait, chatterbait, flipping a jig 100 miles an hour. Guys, I love that. That is my favorite. I think a lot of my success in my career has been that style. So I absolutely love power fishing. And, my nemesis, my weak point is real deep water with electronics. And, it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about. I was never good with it with 2D. I was terrible with it with side imaging and down imaging. I'm not much better with it at forward-facing sonar. So, when fish get out in that 30, 40, 50, 60, they do, that's my weakness, extreme deep water, electronics fishing. I still need to get better at that.
Okay. I'll buy that. That's almost what I was looking for. Do you like frog fishing though?
I love, if you said frog fishing, you broke up. But if you said frog fishing,
I
love frog fishing. I love top water fishing. But,
all right. Well,
but that's like, if I was fun fishing, yes. In a tournament, woo, a lot of heartbreakers with top water fishing.
Yeah. There's 1,000%.
Yeah.
When you think over your last 30 years of fishing, there's been a lot of new techniques or lures that have come out on the market.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like the drop shot had a big 10 or 15 years ago. You think whopper plopper, you think, I don't know, Toki rig.
Wacky rig. Just a Cinco in general.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. Yeah. What's the one that after these 30 years that it's come out, you could not do without?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And I would say there's a few. I heard wacky rig. I heard that thrown in next. I would make it more broad and say the biggest game-changing lure in my career, in my life, has been a soft stick bait. And not necessarily wacky rigs, right? But, weighted wacky or, thread on a jig head or thread on a Texas rig or whatever. That bait is ultra special, and it never seems like the fish get onto it. Like, it's as good now as it was when you first heard of us. Yeah, when you first heard of the Senko, it's as good. So that's one. I think a lot of the finesse techniques that we saw originate maybe in Japan and then hit the West Coast and then come over here. Drop shotting would be a great example of that. I think that's one I can't live without, especially when the fishing gets tough, and then the last one, this is going to surprise a lot of people, but that swim bait, when I heard swim bait when in the early 2000s, and you saw these lures that were as big as a tennis shoe, I thought, man, this is a specialty technique. It's only good if you're after big fish in California or Texas or Florida. But a big swim bait or a swim bait in general has become a huge player in my fishing, and especially when you're talking about generating a big strike. And then the last thing I want to mention, and I am certainly not the best at it, but in the last 24 months, 2 years, a freaking minnow on a jig head.
Yeah.
You better have that on your deck somewhere, bro.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna encounter some fish during the day that will eat that thing. And that's been a big trend the last few years.
It really has. It's and especially it seems like this year it really is really taken over the competitive world. And I think there's some, I don't think, and I get it because companies are out to make money, right? Like everybody's out to make money, but I don't think there's a good job of educating people that you don't have to have forward facing sonar and a jig head minnow to go out and catch fish. Right. Like obviously your job, professional anglers' jobs, companies' jobs are to sell that technology and that money, the hot item. But I think we also need to do a better job of letting people know, like, you don't need $100,000 bass boat. You don't need $30,000 in electronics. Yeah. I probably won more money in tournament fishing when I had a little tracker boat with a 9.9 on it because I just went and fished. I couldn't run all over the lake. Like I couldn't do all that. So you just went fishing, right? And trying to educate people. And I know you do a good job of that. John Cruz does a really good job of letting people know, like, you do not need all of this stuff to go out and have fun. All you need is a bank and a rod, and you can go out and you can figure something out.
That's pretty much it. And you know, I'm glad I started my career on the bank and in John boats.
Yep.
I've fallen in love with kayak fishing the last 10 years, and you know, that really I think for me is the essence of fishing. And you know, so you definitely don't need 80 grand in equipment to catch fish. It's not necessary.
No, not at all. Well, we appreciate you. I'm going to give you a minute here in a second to shout out all your sponsors and your socials and all that if folks don't know where to find you. But I have one question as well, sort of similar to Trey's. This one might hurt some people's feelings too, but what is your favorite body of water to fish? And what is the one that when you see it on the schedule, you just ask, why are we still going there? And why is the Sabine River? No, I'm just kidding.
Amen to that.
Oh, man. All right. So, favorite body of water for me, and I got to give you two. I'm sorry. Lake Champlain always gets my vote because it's got an amazing mix of largemouth and smallmouth. You can do a lot of things there. I won my first elite event there, a big tournament there back in '99. Loved Lake Champlain. My second one, and this isn't because of the quality of fishing, but it's because of the tie, the personal tie for me and how I grew up, is the Delaware River, the tidal Delaware River. Like I said, not the best fishery, but it's the place my grandfather and uncle first took me fishing. I won an elite event there in 2014, and it was probably the most amazing event, energy-wise and full circle moment I've ever had in my life. So Champlain, Delaware River, number one and number two, right in that order. And then, you know, I would say this. I'll give you a broad answer than a specific. I think that the organizations need to open up a little bit to go into new places.
I agree.
I've been very, you know, I've called them out on it straight up that Bass, MLF, whatever, they have a tendency to be complacent and keep going to the same places at the same time of the year. Guys, let's start going to new places. Like, I totally understand the reason they pick a venue. They got a list of 10 things. The number one reason is money. Yeah. And I get that. The number 11th reason below 10 is what we want. So they don't listen to us. But I would love to see a more versatile schedule in general with new places and, you know, a mix of rivers and reservoirs and, you know, natural lakes. I want to see more diversity. And then to pinpoint it, and this brings it all full circle to this interview, if we never went back to Florida, I'd be happy camper.
It's funny because we've had several elite anglers on now, and I think almost every single one has answered Florida to that.
But you know who's never, like, no one's ever said the Sabine River
except for me.
Besides you, I love the Sabine. I think it's a great, as a spectator, I think it's a great event. You catch a lot of fish. Everybody has a chance there.
Yeah.
And one fish could make the difference between making the day 3 cut and the day 4 cut.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's hot.
My point. Yep. That was my point. Like, let's sprinkle some toughies in with the blowouts, right?
Some toughies.
Let's sprinkle a spawn with a pre-spawn and a post-spawn in a summertime, and let's extend the season. Let's fish till November. Bring the fall tournaments back. Come on.
That's one we've talked about.
Yeah,
a bunch.
we saw that in 2020.
Yeah.
Gunnersville in September, and I think or October, whenever it was. Yeah.
Let's bring it back. You know.
I'm telling you, Ike, your name's going on the ballot for president, bro.
Let's bring back a later classic too while we're at it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting,
Summer classic
right?
or something,
Yeah, that'd be a deal.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Awesome, man.
Let me give you 1 second. Looks like you froze a little bit. Yep, there. Oh, we got you back. So right now, I want to give you a chance to shout out those companies that have made it possible for you to do this for the last 30 years. And also, make sure you plug your socials. I will link all of Ike's socials down below. So if you're not following him, I imagine a lot of you are. But if you're not,
Ike.
make sure you go follow his socials because there's a lot of great information in there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, guys. And for sure, would love for everybody to head over to my website, MikeIaconelli.com. You'll see a listing of all the sponsors over there. And then social media, it's at Mike Iaconelli everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, X, everything. Even MySpace. I have an account on MySpace if you still have that. That's right. And you can you can link there to your Commodore 64 computer if you still have that too. So that would be good.
But your dial-up AOL.
I know people, and you got young people watching. I don't even know what a Commodore 64 is.
No idea.
But I did want to also, especially since he's in the car with me, definitely check his son's social stuff. Is at Vegas the Hammer. He's on Instagram, and Vegas the Hammer just started a YouTube channel. Whoop whoop! Check that out. Vegas the Hammer on YouTube. Really good stuff. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go subscribe to that tonight. We'll definitely get that out. We'll link Vegas' stuff down below too, and make sure you folks listen and go follow along because he also his content's super fun, and you're gonna be hearing that name. The Iaconelli name and fishing are gonna be around for a while if that's what Vegas wants to do. He's definitely working towards setting himself up for success in this industry. And it's super exciting, and the energy, man, like it's just game. Like you really did make a huge change to bass fishing, bringing the personality and being yourself and celebrate those raw emotions, right? Like when you catch a fish and you know how important it is, and we all feel that adrenaline rush. And for most of our lives, and my wife's a perfect example. Like she thought us bass fishermen when I met her were super weird. Like she liked to fly fish for trout and stuff. She's like, I don't understand why you have 70 rods and like all of this stuff. And then I got her bass fishing, and she caught like a 4.5 pounder on a Senko, and she got the bug a little bit. And then she was like, what are these tournament things? And I was like, let me show you a video. And I showed her an Ike emotion video where it was a bunch of your catches. And there's one in particular where you caught a fish and there was a pine cone wrapped around your line. And you screamed pine cone several times. And so she has absolutely loved you ever since then. She'll just be out and she'll see a pine cone in the water and she'll scream pine cone. She'll just and so she understood because she got to see the emotion, and now she understands because now she's got a fully rigged Hobie. She's doing the kayak stuff. Like she gets the emotions and why you react that way when you catch those key fish. So I know for myself, for Trey, Ben, we've talked about it a lot. It was super influential with us, and it let people know you can be yourself. You can celebrate those wins. You don't have to be what we always saw. And it's nothing against those guys walking across the stage that fit that mold that everybody thought was bass fishing, right? But you put it out there that you didn't have to be that guy. So appreciate that. appreciate you joining us. I do not have anything else. Do you guys have?
You got anything, Ben?
Nope.
Ike, I got one more thing before we let you go. I appreciate you jumping on, brother. And
no
and we
problem.
will talk to you very soon. You're definitely an inspiration to the culture of anglers that we're trying to grow here at the OneCast. But I want to close with this. And this is for Vegas. Vegas, if you had a message to the young anglers out there that are growing up, trying to become a professional bass angler or an influencer, they just want to get into bass fishing or fishing in general, what is your number one message to them?
That's a good question. It's a great question.
I think I'm gonna steal this one from like my dad, like never give up, because I know it's a little hard for some kids to like be patient.
Just keep trying.
Yeah, just keep trying.
Keep working, keep trying.
Yeah, at the Ike Foundation, we have a bunch of kids that do really good, and they won't catch anything. Like they have really good patience, but then they still come out like the next year.
Yeah.
So I think the motivational word is just never give up or just keep going.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Somebody's got that tattooed on the inside of their arm, don't they, Ike?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm glad he said that, and it is such a great motto. Whether it's fishing or whether it's just life in general, keep pushing, keep working, keep grinding. Just keep pushing toward your dreams, and it's definitely brought me pretty far. And I think other people, it'll bring them far too. So I love that you said that. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Man.
That was great, man. Ike, scream it for us real quick. Never get up, and then we're never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Thank you, Mike Iaconelli in Vegas, for joining us on the OneCast and continue to grow a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.